private cover. Yes, we are again back. Yeah, today we are going to look at the gut health. The gut, when we talk about the gut, actually, we are mainly talking about the large intestines and the small intestines. And today our main focus is actually going to be in the large intestines. And so now in the large intestines, what are we going to look about? So today our main focus is actually going to be about the gut bacteria. Actually, or we would call the normal flora. So as you know, in the large intestines, actually we have lots of different kinds of normal flora. We have the fungi, we have the bacteria and the viruses, and in this case, actually, the biggest component is actually the bacteria. So we have very many normal bacteria in our intestines. There are actually trillions and trillions of normal bacteria in our intestines. So, and we have mainly known bacteria for being the bad bugs in our body. So how comes that in this case we are promoting them? So we have these normal bacteria in our large intestines, and they are beneficial actually. These normal bacteria in our intestines, they are beneficial to our bodies in many ways, and one of which these bacteria actually, they help to fight off the other bad bacteria, the good bacteria versus the bad bacteria. These good bacteria, they produce huge amounts of vitamin B7, and you know vitamin B7 is very important in the formation of various structures. And these bacteria, they also produce large amounts of dopamine, and dopamine is actually a key brain chemical which is important in our brain. And to know the importance of dopamine, we know the degenerations of these dopamine neurons is the one that brings about Parkinson's disease. So it's true that really dopamine is actually a key brain chemical. So again, these bacteria actually help us to prevent inflammation in our gut. You know, very many of us actually have a leaky gut. A leaky gut because of the inflammation that we have in our intestines. Very many times we did have inflammation in our intestines, and this one arises mainly due to the low quantities of the good bacteria that we did have in our gut. And the second factor is also our diet. Like what we really eat. Yeah, what we really eat many times, it really exposes us to inflammation in our gut. That is the pro-inflammatory foods that we eat, and also irritative foods that we eat that bring about inflammation in our gut. So, having seen the various ways these bacteria are really beneficial in our bodies, so how are we promoting them? How are we promoting them? Because the challenge is very many times we actually use antibiotics. We use antibiotics not for the bad, because we actually need them. Yeah, we need these antibiotics for very many things. Many times we have infections. Now, like you might have typhoid. You know, typhoid is one of these dangerous bacteria in our intestines. So many times you might have bacteria like H. pylori, which is dangerous, bringing about ulcers in the stomach. We might have infections in the urinary systems, infections in our respiratory system, infections just generally in blood. So you find that very many times we take these antibiotics to kill these dangerous bacteria. But at the same time, many times we forget actually the collateral damage. These good bacteria, they actually do some collateral damage because they are not selective. On the market, all the antibiotics, most of them that we have, they are actually broad spectrum. Broad spectrum in that when they go into our body, they are not selective. They just kill various kinds of bacteria. So as part of the collateral damage, these normal friendly bacteria in our intestines, we actually end up losing them. They actually also end up being killed. And so in this destruction of the normal bacteria, that's why we end up with low quantities of the good bacteria. And very few of us, if there are even any, who actually remember after taking the antibiotics, who actually remember to take the probiotics. Because as you know, the probiotics, these are the supplements which have the normal friendly bacteria, which are actually friendly to our intestines. So, but very few actually remember to take the probiotics after every series of taking antibiotics. So, and so we end up with the low quantities of antibiotics, mainly because we take antibiotics very many times, but we rarely take probiotics to replenish the normal friendly bacteria after taking the antibiotics which have destroyed them. So leaving alone the taking of the antibiotics, but also our dietary practice, because when we eat our food, we always eat for ourselves, but we rarely remember to eat also for our bacteria, replenishing these bacteria, like feeding them such that they actually flourish. Because these bacteria actually mostly depend on the fibers, and yet for us we are mostly depending on the starch. Because we are mostly depending on the starch, we eat lots of carbohydrates, but we at the end we take less fibers. We take less fibers now. Like when you look at, there are many feeds which have fibers, like vegetables. Vegetables have lots of fibers. The various kinds of vegetables, the cabbage family, and the various kinds. There are very very many kinds of vegetables. So, and now when you look at the even along the vegetables, we have the whole grains, also have fibers. We have avocado having lots of fiber. So this fiber is like the main feed for these bacteria of ours in our intestines. But as we eat lots of starch, we take less fiber. And mainly we are eating for ourselves, but we hardly eat for our bacteria. And so actually these bacteria end up adopting. They also end up adopting. Like when you eat lots of pizzas, they also end up adopting, like eating the pizzas as well. So, but in the end, this ends up exposing us to lots of inflammation in our intestines. That's why we end up having a leaky gut. Many of us really have a leaky gut because of the inflammation in our intestines, owing to the little support that we really give to our bacteria. So what's the way forward? We have looked at this bacteria, but what's the way forward? So the way forward is really we need to support our good natural friendly bacteria. And how do we support them? Many times when we take these antibiotics, we should actually always remember to take some probiotics. Take some probiotics. Probiotics, these are reformed supplements which have lots of these natural friendly bacteria. So when they have been killed by the antibiotics, we need to remember to take some probiotics to replenish these natural friendly bacteria. As the way we have seen the importance of these bacteria, we really need to replenish them. So there are very many kinds of probiotics on market, and you will find yourself that very many times you need to take various probiotics. You need to take various because you don't know exactly which species are fit for you or which one are enough for you, because there are very very many different species in our intestines, and you don't know which exact species are for you and which exact ones you need. So unless you take different kinds, you might not know which one is actually enough for you. So we need to take different kinds of these probiotics to really replenish these natural friendly bacteria. And the other thing is our diet. As we have seen, we need to take lots of fibers, because these fibers, they are the ones which are supporting these natural friendly bacteria, because they feed on these fibers. And leaving alone taking lots of fibers, but also the foods which are pro-inflammatory, leading to inflammation in our intestines, like foods which have like lots of vegetable oils, and foods which have lots of wheat, because as we know, wheat, there are some people who actually react to wheat a lot, and in that case we call it celiac disease. But even if those people who don't have the celiac disease, they are actually people, I mean, most of us, even if we don't actually react to that extent, but it leaves a mark. That's why we have lots of inflammation and a leaky gut. So, meaning we need to adopt those foods which have less wheat, and also using less vegetable oils, and instead using actually, where you would use vegetable oils, at least if you would use actually olive oil, especially the extra virgin olive oil. And so, considering those dietary practices, so meaning if we make it a practice of, when we take antibiotics, taking some probiotics, it would really help. Things like diarrhea, I've seen it especially in my children. Me, mostly when I get children who have diarrhea, all I give them is probiotics, nothing else. And in very many cases,